A proud widow says those words on a crowded stage to force a promise that could save her dying town. The billionaire accepts, but not the way anyone expects. He will fund a big project only if one daughter runs it and proves it can work. 3 sisters, one desperate family, and a whole town watching as pride, hope, and fear collide. Just when things start to look hopeful, a sudden legal threat and a nasty smear piece freeze the money, and someone finds a painting that may tie the billionaire to the town's hidden past. Trust begins to crack, old wounds open, and loyalties are tested in public and in private. Can a community pull itself back from the edge? Who will step forward when everything they love is on the line? And when the truth about the past shows up in a single brushstroke, what will they choose? Money, dignity, or a chance at a new family? Sunlight filtered through the tall windows of Carter Hall, casting long shadows across weathered floorboards that had supported generations of town gatherings. The converted factory space wore its age proudly, exposed wooden beams overhead still bearing the marks of industrial hooks, now draped with twinkling string lights that softened their utilitarian past. Folding chairs lined up in neat rows faced a makeshift stage, while a long table groaned under the weight of covered dishes and desserts brought by what seemed like half the town. Evelyn Carter moved through the growing crowd, her practiced smile masking the flutter of anxiety in her chest. She paused to straighten the creased tablecloth with work-worn hands, fingertips lingering on the edge where the fabric had begun to fray, much like their finances, though she kept that thought buried deep. Her navy blue coat, carefully pressed for the occasion, was buttoned against the morning chill that seeped through the old walls. "The hall looks wonderful, Evelyn," Mrs. Henderson called out, and Evelyn nodded her thanks, watching as more townspeople filtered in beneath the faded "Thank you, Hale Industries" banner that had hung there since the factory's heyday. The mood in the room was a strange mix, relief at the hall's salvation warring with anxiety about change, all wrapped in a thick layer of small-town nostalgia. Her daughters arrived one by one, each carrying pieces of their separate lives. Rose came first, ever punctual, clutching a stack of tutoring flyers she'd clearly printed that morning. Her eldest's spine was ruler straight, her expression carefully neutral as she began arranging the papers on a side table. June slipped in minutes later, still wearing scrubs under her coat, a medical bag slung over one shoulder, and a bandage peeking out from her sleeve, evidence of another long night shift at the clinic. And there was Lily, her youngest, trying to contain an unruly portfolio of paintings while simultaneously waving to what seemed like every other person in the room. The murmur of conversation dropped to a hush as Marcus Hale made his entrance. He moved with the quiet confidence of old money, his charcoal suit worth more than most people's monthly salary. But his smile was small and uncertain as his PR liaison guided him through the crowd. Evelyn watched him from across the room, noting how he nodded politely at each introduction, but seemed to hold himself slightly apart, as if unsure of his welcome in this place his family had once owned. Mayor Thompson took the small stage first, his round face gleaming as he spoke about community spirit and economic revival. Pastor Samuel followed with a blessing that managed to thank both God and the Hale Foundation in the same breath. Through it all, Marcus stood to the side, hands clasped loosely in front of him, expression pleasant but unrevealing. Evelyn's heart hammered against her ribs as she waited for her turn to speak. The hall's mortgage papers burned a hole in her pocket, final notices and red stamps that the crowd couldn't see, but she felt with every breath. This place wasn't just a building. It was where the town gathered during floods and power outages, where they celebrated weddings and mourned at funerals, where children learned to dance and seniors came for hot meals. Losing it would tear the heart out of their community. She climbed the 3 steps to the stage, smoothing her coat one final time. The microphone hummed to life under her fingers. Faces turned toward her expectantly. Faces she'd known all her life. Faces that trusted her to keep this piece of their history alive. Her daughters watched from different corners of the room. Rose's chin lifted in pride. June's eyes warm with encouragement. Lily bouncing slightly on her toes with characteristic energy. The words she'd rehearsed fell away. Instead, Evelyn smiled directly at Marcus Hale and spoke the sentence she'd been turning over in her mind for weeks. "Choose any of my daughters. You've earned it." The gasp was collective, a sharp intake of breath that seemed to suck all the air from the room. Camera flashes erupted like lightning. Rose's flyers slipped from suddenly numb fingers, scattering across the floor. June's hand flew to her mouth, color draining from her face. Lily stood frozen, her portfolio clutched to her chest like armor. And in the sudden, shocked silence, Evelyn kept her smile firmly in place, even as her stomach twisted at the public spectacle she'd just created. The weight of hundreds of eyes pressed against her skin, some horrified, some fascinated, all riveted to what would happen next. She'd thrown her daughters into the spotlight without warning, offered them up like bargaining chips in front of the entire town. But sometimes desperate times called for desperate measures, and she was nothing if not desperate. The silence stretched, thick and heavy as molasses. Marcus Hale's polite mask had cracked just slightly, revealing a flash of something. Surprise, interest, dismay, before smoothing over again. The PR woman beside him was frantically tapping on her phone, no doubt watching their carefully orchestrated charitable event spiral into something else entirely. Evelyn stood her ground on the small stage, her smile never wavering, though her hands gripped the podium hard enough to whiten her knuckles. She'd lived in this town all her life, raised her girls here, buried her husband here. She'd fought to keep this hall open through recession and Rust Belt decline. Now she'd just detonated a social bomb that would either save everything or cost her the respect of everyone in this room, including her daughters. The hall erupted into a chaos of whispers and camera clicks. Phones rose like a wave, capturing Evelyn's still smiling face and Marcus's carefully controlled expression. Someone in the back whistled, drawing nervous laughter. Did she really just... The Carter girls... Bold as brass, that woman? Rose reached her mother first, grabbing her elbow and steering her firmly behind the makeshift curtain that served as a backstage area. June and Lily followed, June shutting the door with trembling hands, while Lily paced the small space like a caged cat. Have you lost your mind? Rose's voice cracked with fury. Everything I've built at the school, my reputation. Our reputation. June corrected softly, pressing her fingers to her temples. Mum, have you been drinking? This isn't like you. Lily spun around, her portfolio clutched to her chest. Maybe it's brilliant. Think about it. We're trending on local Twitter already. Carter Daughters is getting hits. We could spin this as what? Rose cut in. As our mother auctioning us off like prize cattle? Evelyn sank into a folding chair, her public smile finally cracking. It wasn't meant as a real offer, she said, her voice tight but steady. I needed to provoke him into real action, not just another ceremonial check and photo op. By using us? Rose's hands clenched into fists. The hall needs major repairs. Evelyn pulled the mortgage papers from her pocket, spreading them on a dusty card table. The foundation is crumbling. The roof won't last another winter. And She swallowed hard. After your father's funeral, I had to make choices. The medical bills, the college funds I promised you girls. June stepped closer, her nurse's eyes scanning the documents. Mum, how bad is it? I mortgaged everything except the house itself. The hall was the last thing we could use as collateral. When it goes, the town loses its last community space. Evelyn's shoulders slumped. The senior meals program, your art classes, Lily, Rose's tutoring center, the emergency shelter during storms, all of it. Outside, they could hear the buzz of conversation rising and falling like waves. Phone notifications pinged continuously as video clips of Evelyn's announcement spread through social media. Someone knocked on the door, probably another reporter, but they ignored it. "You should have told us," Rose said, but the anger had drained from her voice, leaving only exhaustion. "We could have helped." "How?" Evelyn's laugh was hollow. "June's already working double shifts. Lily's selling paintings under a pseudonym. Yes, I know about that, sweetheart. And you, Rose, you gave up college to help raise your sisters? I couldn't ask for more." Lily stopped pacing. "Wait, how did you know about my paintings?" "Mothers know everything." Evelyn reached for her youngest daughter's hand. "I'm sorry for ambushing you all, but Marcus Hale has the resources to save this place, and he needs a reason to care about more than tax write-offs." Through the thin walls, they heard a sudden hush fall over the main hall. Marcus's voice, smooth and measured, carried clearly. "If I may address Mrs. Carter's unique proposal." The daughters exchanged alarmed looks. June cracked the door open, and they clustered around it, watching as Marcus took the stage with practiced ease. "Community investment requires more than just writing checks," he began, adjusting his silk tie. "Mrs. Carter has issued a challenge, and I accept, but with a modification. I propose a 3-month pilot program fully funded by the Hale Foundation. The only condition is that one of her daughters must lead it, proving that this community can turn investment into sustainable change." The crowd muttered, a mix of surprise and speculation. Phones recorded every word as Marcus continued, "The grant will be significant enough to address the hall's structural needs and establish ongoing programs. The choice of which daughter and what type of program I leave to the Carter family." He stepped down from the stage to immediate chaos, reporters shoving forward, community members calling out questions. His security detail moved in smoothly, creating a path through the crowd. In their hiding place, the Carter women stood frozen. Rose's face was a mask of wounded pride. June's fingers worried at her bandage, and Lily clutched her portfolio so tightly her knuckles whitened. "Well," Evelyn said softly, "that wasn't quite what I expected." "He's clever," Rose admitted reluctantly. "He's turned your provocation into a test of our commitment." "And bought himself 3 months of publicity," June added. Lily bounced on her toes. "But think what we could do with real funding. My art program, my tutoring center." Rose started. "The mobile clinic I've been planning," June said simultaneously. They fell silent, looking at each other with a mix of competition and wariness. Outside, the crowd was beginning to disperse into the town square, phones still buzzing with notifications. The noon church bells rang in the distance, their familiar tone a stark contrast to how thoroughly this ordinary Saturday had been upended. Evelyn watched her daughters, seeing the calculations behind their eyes. Pride warred with practicality, anger with opportunity. The grant could save more than just the hall. It could give each of them a chance at the dreams they'd set aside. But first, they would have to decide if the price of public scrutiny was worth paying. The bells finished their chorus, and in the sudden quiet, the sisters' gazes met. No one spoke, but the tension in the room shifted from fury to something more complex, a mixture of determination, resentment, and unspoken challenge. The Carter kitchen held the warmth of decades of family dinners, despite the tension crackling through it now. Afternoon sun slanted through hand-stitched curtains Evelyn had made years ago, casting soft patterns across the worn oak table where her daughters sat. On the mantel, their father's photograph watched over them, his kind eyes and work-weathered face a reminder of simpler times. Rose drummed her fingers on a stack of tutoring schedules. This is humiliating. We're not some reality show contestants for Marcus Hale to judge. We need to be practical, June said, still in her nursing scrubs from an early shift. She'd been too agitated to change. The hall isn't just about us. Lily sprawled across 2 chairs, her artist's portfolio propped against the table leg. I think it's kind of brilliant, actually. Mum made him put his money where his mouth is by offering us up like prizes. Rose's voice cracked. That's not what I meant to do, Evelyn said quietly from her place at the counter. She pulled out a worn accordion folder and began laying papers on the table. But we're out of options. June leaned forward, squinting at the numbers. Her face paled. Mum, these loan payments are 3 months overdue. Evelyn's hands trembled slightly as she arranged the documents. The hall needs $150,000 in structural repairs. The creditor called again this morning. Rose pushed back from the table, pacing to the window. You should have told us sooner. I could have taken more tutoring clients or what? June interrupted. You already gave up your scholarship to Stanford to stay here after Dad died. You can't keep sacrificing everything. Rose's shoulders stiffened. Someone had to be responsible. We've all been responsible, Lily said, unusually serious. She pulled out her phone, opening a private art sales account. See these paintings? Sold under LC Studios? They've been paying for groceries for months. Lily. Evelyn touched her youngest daughter's shoulder. I knew, but I hoped you'd tell me when you were ready. June twisted her hands together, then seemed to make a decision. While we're confessing things, she pulled a folded paper from her scrub pocket. My doctor wants me to take medical leave. I've been working too many double shifts, and my blood pressure... She stopped as her sisters exclaimed in alarm. I'm fine, I just need to slow down. Which you can't do because of us, Rose said bitterly. A notification chimed on all their phones simultaneously. It's from Marcus's office, Lily reported, reading quickly. Official pilot program requirements. 3 candidates, 3 proposed programs. Measurable community impact within 3 months. Weekly progress reports. Final presentation to the board. Like dancing monkeys, Rose muttered. Like professionals, June corrected. He's treating it like a real grant proposal. Evelyn spread the final document on the table, the hall's deed, with red stamps across it. Girls, I know this isn't fair, but that hall holds this town together. Your father believed in it enough to volunteer there every weekend, and now we have to swallow our pride. Rose finished. She returned to the table, shoulders straight but eyes suspiciously bright. Fine. I'll present my tutoring center expansion plan, but I'm not pretending to like this. I have the mobile clinic proposal already drafted, June admitted. We could reach the outlying farms, offer preventative care. Lily pulled her portfolio close. The community art program could bring in tourism, maybe even grants from the state cultural board. Their phones chimed again. This time it was a calendar invite for Monday morning, the formal presentation to Marcus and his team. That's fast, June noted. He wants to see if we can think on our feet, Rose said. Evelyn watched her daughters, heart aching with pride and worry. The kitchen's familiar warmth wrapped around them as afternoon faded to evening. She'd cooked thousands of meals here, bandaged scraped knees, helped with homework. Now she was asking them to risk public scrutiny and wounded pride to save not just their family, but the whole community. We should practice our presentations, Rose said finally, ever practical. June, you go first. They worked through dinner, picking apart each other's proposals with the brutal honesty only sisters could manage. June refined her health outreach statistics. Rose sharpened her educational impact projections. Lily sketched quick visualizations of her proposed art installations. The kitchen grew dim except for the lamp above the table. Their father's photograph caught the light occasionally, as if he too was listening to their plans. Empty coffee cups littered the table among the scattered papers and spreadsheets. "Whatever happens Monday," Evelyn said as they finally gathered their materials, "I'm proud of you girls." "Save it for after we face the firing squad," Rose replied, but she squeezed her mother's hand. They divided up the presentation materials and headed to their rooms, each carrying a piece of their family's future. That night, they slept poorly, each turning the decision over. Dawn painted the Carter house in soft grays as 3 doors opened simultaneously. The sisters exchanged quick glances in the hallway, each clutching folders and bags for their day of preparation. Rose reached the elementary school library before the janitor. She spread her materials across a worn oak table, the smell of books and chalk dust familiar after years of tutoring here. Her draft literacy program included reading circles, peer mentoring, and take-home materials for parents. "We could use the conference room after hours," Mrs. Chen, the 3rd-grade teacher, said when she arrived. "My students' reading scores dropped 15% this year. I can volunteer Tuesdays and Thursdays," added Mr. Peterson, the librarian, examining Rose's schedule. Rose nodded, making notes. "We need to reach parents who work shifts." She spent the next hour stuffing flyers into envelopes. Each one detailed the free program, with cheerful clip art and clear instructions. The stack seemed endless, but Rose's hand remained steady. At the apartment complex near the mill, she knocked on door after door. Most parents were already at work, but Sarah Miller answered, holding her squirming 6-year-old son. "Tommy's teacher says he's falling behind," Sarah admitted, dark circles under her eyes. "But I work 2 jobs. I can't afford a tutor. That's why we're making it free," Rose said gently. "Every child deserves to read." Sarah's eyes welled up. His dad used to read to him every night, before the accident. "We'll start with his favorite books," Rose promised, her own throat tight. Across town, June organized supplies at the clinic. Her hands shook slightly as she counted bandages and sorted donated medications. The medical note in her wallet seemed to burn through her scrubs. "Immediate stress leave recommended." "You look terrible," Dr. Martinez said bluntly, dropping off a box of sample medications. "But this mobile clinic idea is solid. We could reach 100 patients the first month." June managed a tired smile. "Thanks for the supplies." She caught Sarah, a fellow nurse, between patients. "Could you volunteer one Saturday? We need experienced staff." "For you, of course." Sarah studied June's face. "But you need to rest. Your color's off." "After the presentation," June promised, touching the medical note through her pocket. Meanwhile, Lily transformed her tiny studio above the garage. She arranged easels in a circle, sorted paintbrushes by size, and packed supply kits for beginners. Her hands were steady as she painted sample pieces, but her nerves showed in the tight lines around her eyes. At Morton's Antiques, she carefully unwrapped one of her better landscapes. "I'm hoping to get enough for art supplies," she explained to Mrs. Morton, trying to keep her voice casual. The older woman examined the painting with expert eyes. "Lovely light technique. I know a collector who'd appreciate this style." "Really?" Lily tried not to sound too eager. "He's interested in supporting local artists, especially ones who understand community spirit." Mrs. Morton wrote a check that made Lily's eyes widen. "And dear, sign your real name next time. Talent shouldn't hide." At the hardware store, Evelyn reviewed repair estimates with Bob, the contractor. "The support beams are worse than we thought," he said, showing her photos. "Another winter of snow load could be dangerous." Evelyn's stomach clenched, but her voice remained steady. "How soon would you need to start?" "Before first frost. But Evelyn—" Bob hesitated. The bank called me. They're worried about financing. I'm handling it, she said firmly, though her hands trembled as she later checked her phone messages. 3 more from the mortgage company. The sun was setting when the sisters reconvened in their living room. Hector, Marcus's program manager, was due in an hour. June spread her health statistics across the coffee table while Rose arranged her literacy graphs. Lily propped her sample artwork against the wall. Remember, Rose said, we need concrete numbers, impact assessments, sustainability plans, and personal stories. Lily added, data matters, but hearts matter more. June nodded, then swayed slightly. Rose caught her arm. When was the last time you ate? I'm fine, June insisted, but accepted the sandwich Evelyn brought from the kitchen. They took turns practicing their presentations. Rose detailed how her literacy program could improve graduation rates. June explained how preventative care could reduce emergency room visits. Lily showed how art therapy could help grieving families process trauma. The hall could be more than a meeting place, Lily concluded. It could be a healing place. Their voices grew stronger with each rehearsal. Even Rose's rigid shoulders relaxed slightly as they refined their points. The living room filled with the energy of possibility, tempering their lingering resentment with purpose. Evelyn watched from the doorway, noting how they unconsciously mirrored their father's mannerisms. Rose's determined chin, June's gentle hands, Lily's expressive gestures. The worn photograph on the mantel caught the last sunlight, and for a moment she could almost hear him say, "Trust our girls." The doorbell rang at exactly 7 o'clock. Hector stood on the porch, briefcase in hand, expression professionally neutral. The sisters exchanged one last look, drawing strength from years of facing challenges together. "Ready?" Rose asked quietly. June straightened her jacket. Lily gripped her portfolio. Their mother's impromptu announcement had thrust them into this situation, but their response would be purely their own. Professional, prepared, and rooted in genuine desire to help their community. "Show time," Lily whispered as Rose opened the door. The converted hall's office still smelled of fresh paint and coffee. Rose adjusted the projector screen while June arranged water glasses and Lily hung sample artwork. Morning light filtered through tall windows, highlighting dust motes and casting long shadows across the makeshift conference table. At precisely 10 o'clock, Hector arrived with 2 analysts from Marcus's foundation. His presence was reassuring, calm, professional, with kind eyes that crinkled at the corners. He wore a simple navy suit and carried a worn leather notebook. "Ladies," he greeted them, making eye contact with each sister. "This is Patricia Chen, our education specialist, and David Morris, healthcare programs coordinator." The sisters had practiced their order. Rose first, then June, followed by Lily. Rose stood, smoothing her skirt. Her hands trembled slightly as she distributed folders. "Our literacy initiative targets students grades 3 through 6, she began. "Currently, 42% of local children read below grade level. We propose," her voice caught. She glanced at the photograph of their father on her phone screen, took a breath, and continued stronger. "We propose a structured tutoring program combining peer mentorship with certified instruction. What metrics would you use?" Patricia asked, pen poised. "Monthly reading assessments, attendance tracking, and parent surveys." Rose clicked through graphs showing projected improvements. "We've already secured commitments from 3 certified teachers and 12 high school honor students as volunteer tutors." Hector nodded, making notes. "And space requirements?" "The hall's west wing has 5 rooms ideal for small groups. We'll need minimal modifications, just tables and lighting upgrades." June presented next, her medical credentials displayed alongside sobering health statistics. Last year, 68% of emergency room visits were preventable with basic care. She explained. Our mobile clinic could provide health screenings, vaccinations, and chronic disease management. Ambitious scope, David commented. How would you staff it? June twisted her watch band. I've arranged coverage for my hospital shifts to volunteer full-time. 5 nurses and 2 doctors have committed weekend hours. She didn't mention her own medical leave notice, still unsigned in her wallet. Personal investment matters, Hector observed quietly. But sustainability requires structure beyond individual sacrifice. I know, June admitted. That's why we're developing a rotation system and partnership with the regional medical center. Lily's presentation began with photos of empty factory buildings and former workers. Art isn't just decoration, she said, passion overriding nervousness. It's processing grief, building community, finding purpose. She touched a painting of their father's workbench. When Dad died, I couldn't talk about it, but I could paint. That canvas became a bridge between memory and healing. The room grew still. Even Patricia set down her pen. Each workshop pairs technical skills with emotional expression. Lily continued. Former factory workers teaching woodcraft alongside painting, youth mentoring seniors in digital art, cross-generational storytelling through mixed media. Creative, Hector said warmly. How would you measure success? Participation rates, completed projects, and… Lily pulled out a survey form. Weekly well-being assessments developed with the Community Counseling Center. The door opened quietly. Marcus Hale entered, nodding for them to continue. He stood near the back, expression thoughtful. After Lily finished, Marcus spoke for the first time. You've outlined immediate impact, but what happens after 3 months? The sisters exchanged glances. Rose answered first. The literacy program becomes self-sustaining through trained peer tutors. June's clinic establishes regular service schedules. Lily's art sales support ongoing workshops. We're not looking for a temporary fix, June added. We're building infrastructure. Community ownership is key, Lily said. People invest in what they help create. Marcus studied them, then nodded to Hector. Timeline? 2 weeks to prepare, then the 3-month pilot begins. Hector explained. Mr. Hale will visit periodically, unannounced, to observe progress. Thank you for your thorough presentations, Marcus said. Hector will contact you with next steps. He left as quietly as he'd arrived. The analysts gathered their materials, sharing business cards and handshakes. Hector lingered behind. Impressive work, he said sincerely. Especially the integration between programs. That matters. Will it be enough? Rose asked. Focus on implementation now, he advised. You've laid good groundwork. The rest will follow. Walking home, the sisters processed the morning. The weight of scrutiny lingered, but something else too. Possibility. Patricia liked the peer tutoring component. Rose admitted. David took extra copies of the clinic schedule. June added. And did you see Hector's reaction to the community art wall proposal? Lily smiled. They passed the hall's main entrance, where morning sun lit the old bricks gold. A group of children played hopscotch on the sidewalk, their laughter echoing. 2 former mill workers sat on a bench, sharing coffee and conversation. It's not just about saving the building, Rose said softly. Or proving something to Marcus? June agreed. It's about them, Lily finished, watching the scene. All of them. They reached their front porch, where their mother waited anxiously. Before she could ask, Rose gave a small nod. We did our best, June said. Together. Lily added. The presentation was over. The real work lay ahead. but for now they allowed themselves to feel cautiously optimistic. Whatever Marcus decided, they had stood united, offering their best plans for healing their community. The morning's warmth lingered, carrying whispers of possibility on the autumn breeze. Inside, they found Hector had emailed preliminary feedback. His notes were detailed and encouraging, with specific suggestions for each program. The last line read, "Your father would be proud." Monday morning arrived with autumn chill and nervous energy. Rose arranged workbooks in neat stacks, checking her watch as parents and children filtered into the hall's reading room. "Welcome to our first tutoring session," she announced, masking uncertainty with a warm smile. "Let's pair up and start with reading assessments." Tommy Martinez, a shy third grader, hunched over his book. "I can't," he whispered when Rose sat beside him. "Just one page," she encouraged. "We'll do it together." By afternoon, Tommy had finished his first chapter. His face lit up as other students applauded. "Can I take it home?" he asked, clutching the book. "It's yours," Rose said, her heart lifting at his grin. Tuesday brought June's mobile clinic. She transformed the hall's west wing with privacy screens and basic medical equipment. Her first patient was Gerald Weber, 72, former mill foreman. "Haven't seen a doctor since the factory closed," he admitted gruffly. June checked his blood sugar, frowning at the numbers. When she explained his diabetes risk, Gerald's weathered face crumpled. "My grandson's getting married next year," he said, voice breaking. "I want to be there." "We'll make a plan," June promised, squeezing his hand. "Simple steps, starting today." By day's end, 12 people had received basic screenings. June's colleague Sarah texted, "You're making a difference. Rest tonight." Wednesday dawned grey, matching Lily's anxiety as she set up easels. Her first art class drew skeptical looks from the handful of attendees. "I'm no artist," Margaret Wilson declared, former factory secretary. "Neither was I at first," Lily said. "Today we're just exploring memories." Margaret stared at her blank canvas until tears fell. Then slowly she began painting. The factory's break room, coffee cups on worn tables, sunlight through dusty windows. "We played cards there every lunch," she said, laughing through tears. "Billy always cheated at poker." Other participants gathered around, sharing stories as they painted. The room hummed with conversation and careful brush strokes. Thursday afternoon, Marcus appeared without warning. He stood in the reading room's doorway, watching Rose guide a study group. "Sound it out," she encouraged Tommy, who was reading to younger students. "Remember what we practiced." Tommy's voice grew stronger with each word. When he finished, his proud smile lit the room. Marcus's expression softened, a brief glimpse of emotion crossing his usually composed features. Hector approached Rose afterward. "Impressive progress," he said. "The engagement levels exceed expectations." "We're adapting as we go," Rose explained. "Some students need more one-on-one time." "Document these adjustments for the mid-pilot report," Hector suggested. "It shows responsiveness to community needs." In June's clinic area, a steady stream of patients arrived. Local nurses had volunteered extra hours, creating an efficient workflow. Gerald returned for follow-up, clutching a week's worth of blood sugar readings. "Been walking every morning," he announced. "My daughter's helping with meals." Lily's afternoon art class expanded to include teens and seniors working side by side. Margaret brought old factory photos, sparking a collaborative project mapping the town's history through art. Social media buzzed with cautious optimism. The town's Facebook page shared photos. Tommy reading to his younger sister, seniors painting together, healthcare workers providing basic screenings. Comments accumulated. My mum finally got her blood pressure checked. Proud of Tommy. First chapter book. Beautiful artwork in the hall windows. Friday evening, Evelyn stood in the hall's entrance, watching people leave. Tommy waved his book at her. Margaret carried a wet canvas carefully. Gerald discussed dinner plans with his daughter. Tears welled in Evelyn's eyes as she observed the scene. Rose gathering completed worksheets, June updating patient files, Lily cleaning paintbrushes. The hall hummed with renewed purpose. Sarah from the hospital stopped to chat with June. "We're coordinating volunteer schedules for next month," she said. "The response has been overwhelming." Near the reading corner, Tommy's mother thanked Rose. "He read to his stuffed animals last night," she whispered. "First time ever." Lily hung student artwork along the walls, transforming sterile spaces into galleries of memory and hope. Margaret lingered, adding details to her painting. "Found my old work ID today," she said. "Thinking of doing a series about factory life. Would that be okay?" "That's exactly what this space is for," Lily replied. The day's last light filtered through tall windows, catching dust motes and paint particles. Evelyn touched the worn wooden door frame, remembering countless community gatherings, celebrations, losses shared within these walls. A local reporter interviewed participants, gathering quotes for the weekly paper. Hector made notes on his tablet, nodding approvingly at the natural interactions between programs. "The integration is organic," he told Evelyn. "Each initiative supports the others. That's rare in pilot programs." Children's laughter echoed from the reading room, where a volunteer led story time. In the clinic area, June scheduled follow-up appointments. Art class participants lingered, discussing next week's projects. The hall, so recently at risk, pulsed with new energy. Not just a building preserved, but a community rebuilding itself, one story, one checkup, one brushstroke at a time. As darkness fell, Evelyn watched her daughters lock up for the night. Their faces showed exhaustion but also quiet satisfaction. The first week hadn't been perfect. There were logistics to adjust, schedules to refine, but something fundamental had shifted. Hope, fragile but persistent, filled the spaces between old beams and fresh paint. In the gathering dusk, Evelyn allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, they had found their way forward. The community hall buzzed with celebration as sunlight streamed through freshly cleaned windows. Long tables groaned under the weight of covered dishes, Margaret's famous potato salad, Sarah's cherry pie, and dozens of other homemade contributions. The aroma of coffee and baked goods filled the air. Rose helped Tommy arrange his reading, achievement certificate, on the bulletin board while his mother snapped photos. June chatted with elderly patients who'd seen improvement in their health screenings. Lily stood amid a makeshift gallery where community artwork lined the walls, including Margaret's poignant factory breakroom painting. "The turnout's incredible," Evelyn whispered to Marcus as they surveyed the crowded hall. She wore her best blouse, pressed carefully that morning. "I haven't seen the place this full since I left." Marcus finished quietly, his expression thoughtful. Before she could respond, Hector clinked his glass for attention. The room hushed as Marcus made his way to the front, his usual polish softened by what looked like genuine emotion. "When I returned to town," Marcus began, "I thought I was here to solve a problem with resources alone. Instead, I've witnessed something remarkable." He gestured to the sisters. "These women haven't just created programs. They've reignited community spirit." Rose blushed as he detailed the tutoring program's impact. June straightened proudly when he mentioned the clinic's growing reach. Lily beamed as he praised the art program's therapeutic benefits. "Therefore," Marcus continued, I'm pleased to announce we're exploring options to convert this pilot into a permanent endowment for the hall's programs. Applause erupted. Tommy hugged his reading buddy. Margaret wiped tears while clutching her paintbrush. Gerald, the diabetic patient, raised his sugar-free dessert in toast. The celebration continued as people shared meals at mixed tables, factory workers beside teachers, seniors with teenagers, clinic volunteers trading stories with art students. Children darted between chairs, playing tag while parents chatted. "Remember when this place was just empty echoes?" Sarah asked June, serving herself casserole. "Now look at it." June nodded, watching a former factory worker explain his painting to a young nurse. "It's like the heart's beating again." At the dessert table, Rose helped Tommy's little sister reach a cookie. "You'll be reading chapter books soon too," she promised the girl. Lily circulated with her camera, documenting candid moments, Margaret teaching a teen to mix colors, Gerald showing his improved health charts to concerned neighbors, Tommy reading a story to younger kids. Evelyn sat briefly, overwhelmed by joy and relief. The hall hummed with exactly the kind of community spirit her late husband had always fostered. She watched her daughters moving through the crowd, each in their element, each making their father's legacy proud. But at 3:00, her phone buzzed. The contractor's forwarded email glared from the screen. "Notice of Lion Claim. Re-Community Hall property, outstanding balance, $157,432, claimant, Northeast Development Corp." Asserting senior secured interest dating to original factory construction. Evelyn's hands shook. She excused herself to the office, where she found the blogger's post on her laptop. "Small town sale or sellout? Sources suggest Hale Industries' purchase included undisclosed conditions. Was the community hall acquisition more than philanthropy?" The celebration's warmth seemed to drain from the building. Evelyn watched worry spread as people checked phones, whispered in corners. The lien claim circulated rapidly through local social media. June approached, medical files clutched to her chest. "Mom, people are asking about the hall's ownership status. The clinic schedule." Rose started, then stopped as her phone lit up with concerned messages from parents. Lily overheard 2 art students discussing the blog post. "But what happens to our projects?" one asked. The potluck dishes were quietly packed away. Tommy's mother hustled him out, certificate crumpled in his hand. Margaret stared at her factory painting, lips pressed tight. Across the room, Marcus received a phone call. His face tightened as he listened, turning away from the crowd. Hector hovered nearby, tablet in hand, fielding increasingly urgent messages. "Sir," Hector murmured, "Finance is requesting an immediate conference call." The hall's renewed energy curdled into familiar anxiety. June's patients whispered about medical records. Rose's students' parents gathered in worried clusters. Lily's art group stood protectively near their displayed work. Evelyn watched her daughters exchange glances, their earlier triumph deflating. She recognized their expressions, the same determined worry they'd worn after their father's death, when survival meant unity. Sarah approached June with scheduling concerns. "Should we pause the volunteer rotation?" "Not yet," June said firmly, though her hand strayed to the medical note in her pocket. Rose gathered her teaching materials, answering parents' texts with forced calm. Lily began carefully taking down artwork, promising artists she'd store everything safely. The contractor called, his voice tight. "Mrs. Carter, we need to discuss the renovation timeline given this development." By late afternoon, the hall stood nearly empty. Abandoned coffee cups and half-eaten desserts testified to the celebration's abrupt end. Marcus paced near the windows, speaking tersely into his phone about regulatory inquiry and fund documentation. Evelyn sat at a cleared table, the lien notice open before her. The amount matched their outstanding mortgage almost exactly. Too precise to be coincidence. Around her, the hall's shadows lengthened, throwing into relief both the recent improvements and the remaining repair needs. Through the office window, she watched Marcus end his call, his usual composure strained. Hector approached with more messages, each seemingly worse than the last. The scrutiny that had initially focused on the hall now appeared to extend to Marcus's broader financial dealings. The daughters regrouped near their mother, instinctively drawing together as they had through past crises. Outside, the late afternoon sun caught dust motes swirling through air that had so recently echoed with laughter and hope. Monday morning arrived with a storm of notifications. Rose's phone buzzed incessantly with media requests, while June fielded concerned calls from clinic volunteers. Lily paced the kitchen, refreshing her email for updates about the art program's status. At Hale Industries' local office, Marcus sat with his PR team, tension evident in his usually composed posture. "Full transparency," he insisted, though his fingers drummed against the conference table. "But verify every detail before releasing statements." "Sir," his communications director began carefully. "The allegations about the hall's purchase are baseless," Marcus cut in, "but that doesn't matter if public perception shifts." His phone lit up with another message from the financial compliance team. Back in town, Rose slammed her phone down after the third reporter call. "They're asking about things from 20 years ago, before Dad even worked at the factory. How would I know about Marcus's old business dealings?" June looked up from her clinic schedules, dark circles under her eyes. 3 volunteers already backed out. They're worried about being associated with controversy." She crumpled a resignation email. "Everything we built, all that trust. My students are scared?" Lily interrupted, clutching her class roster. "Parents are asking if the art supplies were bought with questionable money." She made air quotes, voice bitter. As if Marcus didn't watch Tommy paint his first landscape last week. Evelyn sat at her usual spot, sorting through mounting bills. The contractor's estimate for essential repairs lay unopened. What was the point now, with funds frozen? By Tuesday afternoon, Pastor Samuel called an emergency town meeting. The church basement filled quickly, anxiety thick in the air. Sarah from the clinic sat with June's remaining volunteers. Tommy's mother huddled with other parents from Rose's reading group. Lily's art students clustered near their teacher, portfolios clutched protectively. "Folks," Samuel began, his steady voice cutting through whispers, "we need to remember who we are as a community. These programs have helped real people, our neighbors, our children. But what if the money's dirty?" Someone called out. "What if we're part of some corporate scheme?" June stood suddenly. "I've watched Mr. Hale sit with elderly patients, listening to their concerns. That wasn't for show." Her voice shook. "We had a man cry last week because he finally got his diabetes under control. Was that fake too?" Rose added firmly. "Tommy couldn't read 3 months ago. Now he's helping younger kids with books. That's real." Lily held up a student's painting. Mrs. Jenkins processed her grief over losing her factory job through this artwork. You can't fake that kind of healing. The meeting continued for hours, swinging between doubt and defense. Samuel moderated, patiently, letting people voice fears while gently steering toward facts over speculation. That evening, Marcus met with the Carters in their home. He looked tired, his usual polish somewhat dulled. "The regulatory review is standard procedure," he explained, sitting stiffly in their worn armchair. "But I won't let false narratives destroy what you've built." "What about the lien?" Evelyn asked directly. "My legal team is investigating. The timing is suspicious, too convenient." Marcus ran a hand through his hair. "But I need you to keep the programs running. Show them what real community investment looks like." Rose crossed her arms. "While reporters harass us about your past. I understand your frustration. Marcus said quietly. But cancelling now would only fuel speculation. The truth will come out. Let your work speak for itself. June nodded slowly. Our patients need consistency, especially now. My art students are finally opening up. Lily added, I can't abandon them. Wednesday brought the expected but still devastating news. Marcus's team announced a temporary freeze on the larger grant-pending review. The statement emphasized the pilot programs would continue with existing funding, but major hall repairs and expansion plans were on hold. Evelyn watched the announcement on her laptop, remembering the potluck's joy just days ago. In the kitchen, her daughters regrouped again. We keep going, Rose said firmly, even if it's just the pilot. June checked her clinic supplies. We have enough to run another month. The art show stays on schedule, Lily declared, though her voice wavered. The phone rang. Another reporter. Evelyn let it go to voicemail, focusing instead on her daughter's determination. They'd weathered crises before. They'd weather this one too, even if the hall's future hung by a thread. Outside, rain started falling, drumming against windows that still needed repair. The contractor's estimate remained unopened on the counter, a reminder of plans now suspended. But inside, three sisters bent over schedules and supply lists, refusing to let uncertainty derail their commitment to the community they served. Pastor Samuel stopped by with casseroles from concerned church members. The town's talking, he reported, but more people support you than not. They've seen the changes firsthand. Changes that might disappear, Rose muttered. Only if we let them, June countered, organizing medical files. Lily taped up a new student artwork, bright colors defiant against the gray day. Our dad always said community is built day by day, so we keep building. The rain continued into evening. Marcus's team sent updated talking points for handling press inquiries. The lien claims paperwork arrived, thick with legal language. June's phone buzzed with another volunteer cancellation. But Tommy's mother called to say he'd finished his first chapter book. A clinic patient reported improved test results. An art student left a voicemail about how painting had helped her sleep better. Small victories. Evelyn thought, watching her daughter's work. Sometimes those were enough to keep faith alive. As Wednesday ended, the grant remained frozen, the hall's future uncertain. But 3 programs continued, powered by determination and the stubborn belief that good work matters, especially in crisis. The rain fell steadily, but inside the Carter home, plans were made, hopes maintained, and family bonds held strong against the gathering storm. Exactly 7 days after the grant freeze, Sheriff Mills posted the enforcement notice. The yellow paper glared against the hall's weathered door like a fresh wound. Inside, Evelyn's hands shook as she read the legal documents delivered that morning. Potential repossession within 30 days. Marcus's attorney explained over speakerphone. His voice echoed in the empty hall. The lien claim dates back to the original factory closure. They're arguing unpaid contractor fees. Rose paced, her tutoring materials untouched. How did this suddenly surface now? Convenient timing, June muttered, checking her phone as another volunteer cancellation lit up the screen. Outside, a small crowd gathered, pointing at the notice. The Regional Herald's headline blazed on several phones. Hale Industries, profit before people. The article detailed Marcus's wealth accumulation, while their town struggled post-factory. 3 more parents pulled their kids from reading groups, Rose reported, her voice tight. They're worried about being associated with... She gestured vaguely at the mess. Lily clutched her portfolio closer. My afternoon class is down to 4 students. The hall's door creaked open. Thomas Weber, their father's former foreman, stepped in. His weathered face carried decades of bitterness. Finally, he announced to the room, the truth comes out. Hale abandoned us years ago, left us holding nothing but promises. Now he's back playing savior? He spat the words. Your father would be ashamed, letting that man use you for publicity. Mr. Webber, June started, but he cut her off. I remember when Marcus left. Overnight. No warning. The factory bleeding money, workers with families to feed. His eyes burned. Now he throws pennies at us while the papers say he's worth millions. That's not the whole story, Lily protested. Isn't it? Look around. Same old game, different decade. After he left, the silence felt suffocating. Evelyn retreated to the office, the sisters following. Once the door closed, their mother crumpled into a chair. There's something I haven't told you, she whispered. When your father died, Her voice caught. I used the house as collateral for the Hall's mortgage. If they seize the property, we could lose everything. Rose finished, understanding dawning. June sank down. Why didn't you tell us? I thought I could manage it, the payments, the repairs. Evelyn wiped her eyes. Your father loved this place. It was his legacy to the town. I couldn't let it die. Lily suddenly stood. I have a buyer interested in my Sunset series, the big ones. They're worth— No, Rose cut in. We're not selling your work in panic. We have to do something. June checked her phone again. 2 more clinic volunteers backed out. They're scared of legal involvement. The office door opened. Marcus stood there, looking grave but determined. I've been making calls. My contacts in the State Commerce Committee can help delay enforcement proceedings. For how long? Rose demanded. Long enough to investigate the lien's validity. Something about this feels orchestrated. He loosened his tie. I've requested my old company records, and I'm prepared to testify about the factory's final years. Your reputation, Evelyn began, is less important than the truth. Marcus's voice hardened. I left this town badly once. I won't do it again. Lily paced, paint-stained fingers twisting. I have an art show next week. If I could just— We said no. Rose snapped. We're not that desperate. Aren't we? June gestured at the notice, visible through the window. Our volunteers are vanishing. The program's barely holding on. Outside, more townspeople gathered. Phones recorded the scene, undoubtedly feeding social media's growing storm. The sisters watched their community fracture in real time. I'll call in every favor I have, Marcus promised. Buy us time to fight this legally. While we what? Rose demanded. Watch everything collapse? While we prove them wrong, Evelyn said quietly. She straightened, finding her strength. We keep the programs running, even if it's just us. Show them what real investment looks like. June nodded slowly. I can cover extra clinic hours. I'll combine the reading groups. Rose added, make it work with fewer volunteers. Lily grabbed her sketchbook. The art show stays on, even if it's small. Marcus made another call, speaking in low tones about injunctions and precedents. The legal machinery ground slowly into motion, but the sisters knew time wasn't on their side. The afternoon crept by. More cancellations arrived. The sheriff's notice drew increasing attention. But inside the hall, 3 sisters worked stubbornly on. Rose adapting lesson plans, June reorganizing clinic schedules, Lily preparing canvases. Thomas Webber's words hung heavy, challenging their faith in Marcus's intentions. Yet they'd seen him sit with their students, listen to clinic patients, study artwork with genuine interest. Those moments felt real, whatever his past held. Evening approached. The crowd outside thinned, but the yellow notice remained, a stark reminder of threats bearing down. Marcus worked his phone steadily, leveraging old connections for help. We have options, he assured them. Legal channels, regulatory appeals. The truth about that lien will come out. The sisters exchanged looks, determination mixed with fear. They'd built something valuable here, watching their community heal through books, healthcare, and art. They wouldn't let it slip away without a fight. Evelyn clutched the legal papers, years of sacrifice and hope bound in cold terminology. Outside, shadows lengthened across their threatened hall. But inside, three sisters planned and plotted, refusing to surrender their father's legacy or their own dreams to fear and suspicion. 72 hours after the creditor's notice, the morning light filtered weakly through the hall's dusty windows. Rose stared at the empty tutoring tables, where just days ago children had practiced reading. Now only scattered papers remained. "Another cancellation," June announced, hanging up her phone. "The diabetes screening volunteer says she can't risk legal exposure." Lily sat cross-legged on the floor, bubble-wrapping her canvases. "Mum's realtor friend in Cincinnati might have room for us, temporarily." "We're not leaving," Rose snapped, but her voice wavered. The hall's silence spoke volumes. Where last week dozens of volunteers had bustled about, now only the sisters remained. Even the usual morning coffee group had stopped meeting, afraid the sheriff might appear with more papers. The door creaked open. Marcus entered, looking haggard. "The hearing's set for Monday, 4 days." Rose whirled on him. "Convenient timing, right when the press coverage peaks." "What are you implying?" "This whole thing. The pilot program, the sudden crisis, it's perfect PR. Billionaire tries to save small town. Did you plan it?" "Rose," June protested. "No, let her speak." Marcus's jaw tightened. "I've earned the suspicion. You left this town once." Rose continued. "Now you're back playing savior, but the minute trouble hits, your hands are legally tied. How convenient." June slammed her medical bag down. "That's enough. At least he's trying. Unlike you, who won't accept help from anyone." "Because help always comes with strings." "Like the strings you put on me?" June's voice cracked. "Working double shifts while you decided how every penny got spent? Playing martyr while I—" She stopped, touching her side where the doctor's note stayed hidden. Lily looked up from her packing. "We could sell my paintings. The Sunset series. For the last time, no!" Rose shouted. "Then what's your brilliant plan?" Lily stood, paint-stained hands trembling. "Because right now, all I see is you shooting down every option while we sink." The phone rang, cutting through their argument. Evelyn answered, her face tightening as she listened. "Yes, Mr. Chapman. I understand. Yes, the offer is generous." She wrote numbers on a notepad. 24 hours to decide. I'll discuss it with my daughters." She hung up slowly. "That was a developer's broker. They're offering to buy the hall outright, convert it to luxury apartments." "What?" The sisters spoke in unison. "The number's fair. More than fair." Evelyn's hands shook. Enough to clear the debt and have something left to relocate. Horror dawned on their faces. This hall had been their father's pride, where he'd organized union meetings, hosted community dinners, taught his daughters to dance. "You can't," Lily whispered. "We might not have a choice." Evelyn's voice broke. "The auction—" The door opened again. Pastor Samuel entered, his calm presence filling the space. "I heard raised voices," he said quietly, "and I've been praying about this situation." He pulled up a chair, gesturing for them to sit. Reluctantly, they gathered around. "This hall," he began, "isn't just a building. It's 30 years of Christmas pageants. It's where we sheltered families during the flood of '98, where your father taught teenagers carpentry so they'd have trade skills." Tears slid down Evelyn's cheeks. "The developer's offer is tempting," Samuel continued, "but some things can't be measured in dollars. This community needs its heart. The hearing's Monday, Rose said dully. Then we have 4 days. Samuel pulled out his phone. I've already called an emergency town meeting, tonight. Marcus, who'd been silent, stepped forward. I can't commit funds publicly right now, but I can testify at the hearing. Tell them what I've seen here, the literacy gains, the health screenings, the healing through art. Remind them what community means. Will it be enough? June asked. With the town behind us, maybe? Samuel smiled gently. You'd be surprised how powerful ordinary people can be when they stand together. Lily wiped her eyes. I'll stop packing. We need to document everything, Rose said, professional instincts kicking in. Every success story, every life touched. June nodded. I'll call my patients. Ask them to speak about the clinic's impact. Evelyn touched the developer's number on her notepad, then deliberately crossed it out. Samuel's right. Some things aren't for sale. They worked through the afternoon, gathering testimonials, organizing records. The exhaustion of the past days showed in their faces, but determination had replaced despair. Marcus made calls from the corner, speaking quietly to his lawyer about testimony preparation. He couldn't fight with money this time, but perhaps truth would serve better. By evening, the hall's main room filled with townspeople responding to Samuel's call. The sisters watched faces they'd known all their lives, people their father had worked with, children they'd babysat, neighbors who'd brought casseroles when their dad died. 4 days, Samuel announced to the crowd. 4 days to show what this hall means to us. Who's with me? Hands raised. Voices called out offers of help. Someone started a social media campaign. Another offered to contact the local news. The sisters stood together, shoulders touching. The hearing loomed Monday, but they weren't alone anymore. Whatever came, they'd face it as their father had taught them, with dignity, determination, and community at their backs. Outside, the setting sun painted the halls worn, bricks gold. Inside, hope flickered back to life, as fragile and precious as their father's dream of a place where everyone belonged. Saturday morning dawned with determination replacing despair. By 7 a.m., trucks lined the hall's parking lot, painters' vans, carpenters' pickups, and personal vehicles loaded with tools. Rose stood at a folding table, checking names against a volunteer schedule. Mr. Peterson, you're on window repair. Mrs. Chen has your assistant scheduled for 10. Got my tools right here. The retired factory worker patted his toolbox. These windows saw me through 30 years. Least I can do is fix them up. Inside, June directed traffic. Medical supplies in the East Room. We'll set up screening stations there for Monday's health fair. She touched her side briefly, pushing aside her own health concerns. There wasn't time for that now. Lily had transformed the main hall into a makeshift gallery. Careful with those frames, she called as teenagers hung donated artwork. Local artists had responded to her midnight email blast with surprising generosity. Watercolors, photographs, even hand-carved wooden pieces. In the kitchen, the diner's staff worked assembly line style. Keep that soup coming, Mary from the diner shouted. These volunteers need fuel. Marcus arrived without fanfare, Hector at his side with a laptop. They claimed a corner table, phones out. My contact at the State Bar Association is reviewing the creditor's history, Marcus said, voice low. There's a pattern of questionable claims against historic properties. Hector nodded, typing rapidly. I've found 3 similar cases, all targeted community buildings when developers showed interest. Push for emergency mediation, Marcus instructed. I want this resolved before any auction can proceed. The morning flowed into afternoon. Peterson finished the windows while teaching 2 high school students basic carpentry. See here, your grandfather probably installed these frames. We built things to last back then. In the reading corner, Rose supervised the readathon setup. A teenage girl practiced her passage, voice growing stronger with each try. Her grandmother beamed from a newly painted chair. "When I was your age," the grandmother said, "I learned to read right here. Your grandfather taught night classes after his shift." June's health fair preparations took shape. Local nurses arranged donated equipment, creating private screening areas with borrowed curtains. Blood pressure, diabetes screening, basic cardiac. We can catch problems early, June explained to volunteers. "Like you did with Mr. Roberts." A nurse replied, "If you hadn't checked his glucose that first week." June smiled, remembering the elderly man's tears of relief when she'd shown him how to manage his diabetes. By sunset, the hall hummed with achievement. Fresh paint brightened the walls, repairs strengthened the structure, and the art display transformed the space. Volunteers shared soup from mismatched bowls, comparing paint-stained hands and aching muscles. Sunday began before dawn. Lily arranged artwork labels while Rose organized reading sign-up sheets. June finalized the health screening schedule, coordinating with volunteer medical staff. Marcus paced, phone to his ear. "Yes, Judge, I understand the unusual nature of the request. Yes, I'll personally vouch for the community's good faith. Thank you for considering expedited mediation." Hector burst in mid-morning, waving printouts. "Found something. The creditor's company was incorporated 3 weeks after the developer expressed interest. They bought the old lien for pennies on the dollar." "Predatory," Marcus growled. "Get it to legal. I want this ready for tomorrow." The day unfolded in waves of activity. Children practiced reading passages while parents painted trim. Nurses organized supplies while carpenters reinforced railings. Artists hung works while volunteers deep-cleaned every corner. Peterson finished teaching his impromptu carpentry class. "These skills built this town," he told his students. "Don't let anyone tell you different." The teenage reader mastered her passage, voice clear and confident. "Can I do 2 readings tomorrow?" she asked Rose. "Grandma says Dad learned to read here too." June's volunteers completed the medical station setup. "Like a real clinic," she said, touching the fresh curtains. "Professional but welcoming." Lily stood back, surveying the transformed hall. Local landscapes hung beside abstract pieces, professional works beside student art. "It's not just decoration," she explained to a curious volunteer. "It's our story." As Sunday evening approached, exhausted workers gathered for a final meal. Mary's soup had evolved into a community potluck. Casseroles appeared alongside sandwiches, salads next to homemade pies. "Look," Lily whispered to her sisters. The setting sun streamed through clean windows, catching the fresh paint and polished wood. Art lined the walls, reading nooks invited comfort, and medical screens promised care. More than repairs, they'd created something new while honoring what came before. Marcus ended another call, looking satisfied. Mediations confirmed for Tuesday morning. The judge was impressed by the community response. "Will it be enough?" Rose asked, professional mask slipping to show worry. "We've done what we can," June said, touching her sister's arm. "The hall's ready. The programs are solid. The community's here." Evelyn moved through the crowd, thanking volunteers, her eyes bright with unshed tears. The hall had never looked better, not even in her husband's day. Peterson packed his tools, patting a repaired window frame. "Good bones," he said. "Always had good bones, just needed people to remember why they matter." The teenage reader helped her grandmother into a coat. "See you tomorrow," she called to Rose. "I've got both passages memorized." As darkness fell, the volunteers gradually dispersed. The sisters stood in the doorway, watching taillights disappear into the evening. Tomorrow would bring the hearing, but tonight they had this moment. Their father's hall renewed, their community united, their programs ready to prove their worth. The hall settled into night, fresh paint drying, new repairs settling, art hanging proud on sturdy walls. In the quiet, it felt like their father's dream made new, a place where everyone belonged, where healing happened, where stories lived and grew. The courthouse loomed against the morning sky, its brick facade stern and imposing. Inside, footsteps echoed off marble floors as the Carter sisters entered, their Sunday best a stark contrast to the corporate lawyers' polished suits. Evelyn smoothed her worn blazer, a gesture that spoke of dignity rather than nervousness. The waiting room buzzed with whispered conversations as townspeople filed in. Peterson still in work boots, Mary from the diner clutching a tissue, dozens more who'd helped repair the hall. Marcus arrived without fanfare, nodding to Hector, who carried a thick folder of documents. His presence was understated but solid, like an anchor in choppy waters. "All rise," the bailiff called at 9 sharp. Judge Henderson surveyed the packed courtroom. Matter of Midwest Capital Holdings versus Carter Community Hall Foundation. The creditor's lawyer, Mr. Dawson, rose with theatrical precision. "Your Honor, this is a straightforward matter of debt enforcement. The lien is properly registered." "If I may," Hector interrupted, approaching with documents. "We have evidence suggesting improper registration and questionable timing." The morning unfolded in careful testimony. Marcus took the stand first, his voice steady. "I purchased the mill to help, not harm," he stated. "The hall represents everything worth preserving: community, education, healthcare access." Dawson's cross-examination turned aggressive. "Isn't it true you abandoned this town decades ago, only returning when property values made investment profitable?" "I left as a young man," Marcus admitted. "I returned to make amends, not profit." Evelyn testified next, her hands clasped tightly. "My husband taught night classes there for 30 years. When the mill closed, he kept teaching. The hall was where laid-off workers learned new skills, where their children got tutoring, where we held each other up." Her voice caught. "Last week, a teenage girl read her first chapter book there. Last month, we caught Mr. Roberts's diabetes before it became critical. That's not just statistics. That's our neighbors living better lives." Rose approached the stand with careful composure. "Our pilot program has shown measurable results. Reading scores improved 12%. Attendance is at 97%. We have documentation of every outcome." June's testimony focused on hard data. "We've conducted 47 health screenings, identified 8 previously undiagnosed conditions, and connected 32 residents with ongoing care. The economic impact of preventive care alone—" "Objection," Dawson interrupted. "Irrelevant to the debt obligation." "I'll allow it," Judge Henderson said. "Continue." The turning point came when Hector called their surprise witness, a former employee of the creditor company. "Yes," the witness admitted under questioning. "The company was formed specifically to purchase old liens. They targeted properties showing development potential." "And when did they learn about the luxury loft proposal?" Hector pressed. "Before buying the lien," the witness said reluctantly. "They called it distressed asset acquisition with upside potential." Dawson's face tightened. His cross-examination grew heated, revealing gaps in the company's documentation. "These signatures don't match," Judge Henderson noted, examining the paperwork. "And the dates raise serious questions about proper procedure." The afternoon light slanted through high windows as the judge rendered his decision. "Given the evidence of potential impropriety and the clear community interest, I'm ordering mandatory mediation. No enforcement action for 60 days. Both parties will participate in good faith settlement discussions." Relief rippled through the courtroom. It wasn't total victory, but the hall was safe for now. Furthermore, the judge continued, any settlement must consider community impact and allow reasonable time for alternative financing arrangements. Outside the courthouse, the crowd gathered in small clusters. Marcus spoke quietly with Hector about next steps. The corporate review of his funds remained ongoing, limiting his immediate options. We'll find a way, Hector assured the sisters. The judge's ruling gives us time to explore options. June hugged a crying Mary from the diner. Peterson clapped Marcus on the shoulder, a gesture of surprising familiarity that spoke of growing trust. Rose checked her phone. 3 messages from students' parents asking if tomorrow's tutoring is still on. Tell them yes, Evelyn said firmly. We keep going. Lily studied the courthouse's long shadow stretching across the square. 60 days, she murmured. We can do a lot in 60 days. The autumn sun was setting as they left, painting the sky in shades of hope and warning. The hall still needed saving. Marcus's funds remained frozen, but they had bought precious time. Pastor Samuel offered a quiet prayer of thanks on the courthouse steps. Mary announced the diner would serve free coffee all evening. Peterson was already making calls about continuing repairs. One day at a time, Evelyn reminded her daughters as they walked to their car. Just like always. The courthouse lights dimmed behind them. Ahead, the hall waited, still standing, still serving, still fighting. Tomorrow would bring tutoring sessions, health screenings, and art classes. The work would continue because that's what this community did. They showed up, they helped each other, they endured. Marcus watched them leave, his expression thoughtful. The legal team had already started preparing for mediation, but he knew the real strength lay in what he'd witnessed today, a community that refused to be stripped of its heart. The sisters drove home in weary silence, each lost in thoughts of tomorrow's tasks. The hall's lights were visible from blocks away, a beacon in the growing dark. Someone had left the porch light on, a small gesture of faith that they would return with good news. They had. Not the complete victory they'd hoped for, but enough to keep fighting. Enough to keep teaching, healing, creating, and believing in the power of a community that refused to let go of its dreams. 2 days after the hearing, the hall hummed with renewed energy. The morning light streamed through freshly cleaned windows, catching dust motes that danced above stacked folding chairs and worn wooden tables. Rose's tutoring session buzzed with enthusiasm. "Sound it out," she encouraged Tommy, a 3rd grader who'd been struggling. "Remember what we practiced." "Confident," Tommy read slowly, then broke into a grin. "I did it!" More students had returned, their parents reassured by the court's decision. Rose moved between tables, noting how her volunteer tutors handled their groups with growing skill. Even Mrs. Peterson, who'd initially been hesitant, now sat surrounded by 5 eager readers. In the makeshift clinic area, June checked Mr. Wilson's blood pressure. "Much better," she said, making notes in his chart. "The medication is working. Wouldn't have known about it if you hadn't caught it last month," he replied, rolling down his sleeve. "My daughter says thanks." The waiting area held twice as many people as last week. Word had spread about June's gentle competence, her ability to explain complex medical issues in simple terms. A retired nurse had volunteered to help, easing June's workload. Lily's afternoon art workshop filled the main space with easels and the sharp scent of acrylic paint. Her students, mostly former factory workers and their families, worked in comfortable silence, broken occasionally by quiet conversations. "Art helps us remember," Lily explained to her class, "but it also helps us imagine what could be." As the day wound down and volunteers packed up, Lily stayed behind. She'd been working on something special, hidden behind a cloth in the storage room. The late afternoon sun slanted through the windows, creating long shadows across the floor. Marcus arrived just as she was unveiling the canvas. He'd been stopping by regularly, checking on repairs and program progress. Today, he carried a tablet with draft proposals for the mediation. "I wanted to show you something," Lily said, her voice unusually hesitant. She pulled the cloth away, revealing a large portrait. Marcus stopped mid-step. The painting showed a young woman with familiar features, high cheekbones, determined eyes, a slight tilt to her chin. She stood in front of an old factory building, wearing a dress that spoke of another era. "Where?" His voice cracked. "Where did you see this?" Lily touched the canvas's edge. "I found an old photograph at Mrs. Henderson's estate sale last spring. It was torn, just a scrap, really, but something about her face." She shrugged. "It wouldn't let me go. I kept imagining her story." Marcus moved closer, his hand hovering near the painted surface. "This building, it's the original factory, before the renovations." His fingers trembled slightly. "And the woman, she looks exactly like my Aunt Catherine." "Your aunt?" Lily's eyes widened. "She worked here in the 60s. There was a family disagreement. My father's business decisions. She disappeared after that. We never—" He swallowed hard. "I have a photograph, almost identical to this. It hung in our hallway when I was small." Lily sat on a nearby stool. The estate sale was from old storage units. Mrs. Henderson bought them at auction. "Catherine lived in those apartments above the drugstore," Marcus said quietly. "After she left, no one knew what happened to her things." The silence between them grew heavy with possibility. Dust motes swirled in the fading light, like memories taking shape. "That's why you came back," Lily realized. "Not just business, you were looking for connections." Marcus nodded slowly. "I thought buying the factory, helping the town, maybe it could make up for how things ended. My father's choices, my own silence." "The photograph," Lily said. "It showed more than just her face, didn't it? There was someone else in the original." "A little boy." Marcus's voice grew soft. "Me. She used to bring me here, let me watch the machines. She taught me about responsibility to community, about seeing people as more than numbers on a ledger." Lily studied her painting with new eyes. "I gave her that expression, like she's looking toward something important. In the scrap photo, you could only see part of her face. But her eyes—" She gestured to the canvas. "They seemed to be watching over something precious." Marcus touched the painted building's outline. "The original factory bell. It's exactly right. How did you know?" "I didn't. I just felt it. Sometimes paintings know things we don't." The hall creaked gently, settling in the cooling evening air. Through the windows, they could see townsfolk walking home, calling greetings to each other, their shadows long in the sunset. "May I?" Marcus gestured to his phone. Lily nodded, watching as he photographed the painting. His hands were steady now, but his eyes held a bright sheen. "I need to make some calls," he said. "There are people, researchers, who might be able to trace her movements, and the storage unit's records." "Of course." Lily began cleaning her brushes, giving him space. Marcus paused at the door, looking back at the portrait. The painted woman gazed out with knowing eyes, as if she'd been waiting all along for this moment of recognition. "Thank you," he said simply, then walked out into the evening. Through the window, Lily watched him lift his phone, his silhouette sharp against the sunset. The portrait seemed to glow in the last light, a bridge between past and present, loss and possibility. She covered the canvas carefully, knowing tomorrow would bring new questions, new connections, new understandings of what it meant to belong. For now, the quiet hall held their shared secret, a reminder that sometimes healing came in unexpected ways, through unexpected art, in its own perfect time. The morning after the portrait's discovery, Marcus sat in the county records office, surrounded by dusty files. His tablet displayed a growing timeline of property transfers and old factory payroll records. Hector brought him coffee, setting it carefully between stacks of yellowed papers. "The creditor's claim looks shakier by the hour," Hector said. "Their documentation has gaps, convenient ones." Marcus nodded, studying a faded employee list. "Catherine Reynolds," he murmured. "She worked here until 1968, then nothing." That afternoon, in a small law office 2 towns over, an elderly clerk pulled a box of unclaimed storage records. "Henderson Auctions," she confirmed. "Lot 247, contents from unit rental dating back to 69. Original renter listed as C. Reynolds." The pieces were falling into place, but Marcus's expression remained careful, controlled. He'd learned the cost of hasty conclusions. At the hall, life continued its determined rhythm. Rose's tutoring sessions drew steady attendance. Children sprawled on cushions, sounding out words while parents watched proudly. June's clinic saw a stream of patients, many returning for follow-up care they'd long postponed. Wednesday brought an unexpected visitor to Lily's art class. Margaret Whitman, elegantly dressed despite her 80 years, watched the students work. "That portrait," she said quietly to Lily. "The one of the woman by the factory. I'd like to buy it." Lily hesitated. "It's not officially for sale. I worked as a secretary for Howard Hale in the 60s. Margaret continued. "Catherine Reynolds was exactly as you painted her. Same determined look, same way of standing like she owned her place in the world." The painting sold for a modest sum, but Margaret's confirmation felt priceless. She promised to hang it where others could see it. Where it belongs, with town history. Thursday evening found Marcus at Evelyn's kitchen table, his usual polish softened by exhaustion and honesty. "I left because I couldn't face what the factory's closure meant," he admitted. "My father's decisions hurt people I'd grown up with. It was easier to build something new elsewhere than stay and see the consequences." Evelyn poured more coffee. "The town survived. Not easily, but we did." "That's what I never understood," Marcus said. "Community isn't just profit margins. My aunt tried to teach me that." Rose joined them, her tutoring materials tucked under one arm. She sat, fixing Marcus with a direct look. "If you're staying this time," she said, "we need complete transparency. No corporate shadows, no hidden agendas. These people trust us now." "I agree." Marcus met her gaze. "That's why I'm proposing a new structure for the hall's management. Joint governance, trustees from both the town and my foundation. Shared responsibility." Rose nodded slowly. "It's a start." In the hall's newly repaired office, June sorted medical supplies while Hector reviewed program metrics. "The health outcomes are impressive," he said. "You've built something sustainable here." "We all have." June glanced up, caught his admiring look, and quickly returned to her inventory. But her smile lingered. Throughout the week, small donations appeared. Children's pocket money in mason jars, retirees' modest checks, bake sale proceeds. Each contribution came with a note. Memories of first jobs at the factory, gratitude for current services, hope for the future. Marcus worked steadily, his influence opening doors without fanfare. Title searches revealed the creditor's claim rested on misrepresented documents. Property records showed clear, unbroken ownership lines. The legal ground beneath their feet grew firmer. Friday afternoon, Marcus gathered the sisters in the hall's main room. Sunlight streamed through clean windows onto fresh paint and solid repairs. The mediation is scheduled for next week," he announced. "I've invited community representatives to participate. The endowment proposal is ready for review." "And the creditor?" Rose asked. "Their claim is unraveling. We'll have final proof before the meeting." Lily touched a newly hung student artwork. "What about your aunt? Did you find anything?" "Some leads. Catherine left traces, accounts, rentals. She stayed closer than we knew." Marcus's voice held careful hope. "The research continues." June looked up from her clinic schedule. "The town's watching, you know. They need to see this works." "It already is working," Hector said quietly. June smiled at him, then quickly looked away. Saturday morning brought more volunteers, teenagers washing windows, retired teachers organizing books, nurses scheduling future clinic hours. The pilot programs hummed with purpose, no longer an experiment but a promise taking root. In the kitchen that evening, Evelyn watched her daughters talking over program plans. Rose's defenses had softened, June's worry lines had eased, and Lily's restless energy had found focus. The hall was becoming what it was meant to be, not just a building saved, but a community renewed. The week ended with sunset painting the hall's weathered bricks in warm light. Marcus stood in the doorway, watching people leave evening activities. A child waved, parents nodded respectfully, and elderly couples walked arm in arm, their steps sure on repaired steps. The portrait of Catherine hung in Margaret's front window, visible from the street. In the dying light, the painted figure seemed to watch over the town, her expression both challenging and proud, as if she'd known all along that bridges could be rebuilt, that healing started with small acts of faith. Tomorrow would bring more work, more questions, more careful steps toward trust. But tonight, the hall stood solid against the darkening sky, its lights promising welcome, its doors open to possibility. Inside, the sisters gathered their things, ready to head home. Their footsteps echoed on floors that had held generations, would hold more to come. Marcus waited, patient now, understanding that some things couldn't be rushed, that real change, like real belonging, grew slowly, built on countless small moments of choosing to stay, to work, to believe. Day one of mediation dawned cold and clear. In the town hall's conference room, legal papers covered the long oak table like fallen leaves. Marcus sat beside his attorneys while Evelyn and the town council settled across from them. The creditors' representatives maintained stiff postures in their corner seats. "The endowment structure must protect local interests," Evelyn insisted, tapping her pen against the draft agreement. "We need guarantees beyond goodwill." Marcus nodded. "I propose a 6-member governing board, 3 elected by the town, 2 from my foundation, and you as founding chair." "Advisory role only," Evelyn clarified. "The community needs direct voting power." The morning stretched into afternoon as they passed details. Rose took careful notes while June provided coffee, and Lily sketched the proceedings in her notebook. The creditor's lawyer interrupted frequently, questioning financial terms until Hector produced documentation showing inconsistencies in their claims timeline. "These records indicate your client filed similar claims in 3 other towns," Hector stated quietly. "All following corporate acquisitions, all with suspicious timing." By evening, the creditors' swagger had deflated. Their lead attorney requested a private conference with his client. Day 2 began with compromise. The creditor would accept structured settlement, 30% immediate payoff, the remainder in monitored payments over 5 years. In exchange, they would withdraw all claims and submit to oversight. "We'll need transparent accounting," Rose insisted. "Monthly reports, public access." June organized the medical documentation while Lily presented artwork from her community classes, evidence of the pilot program's impact. The town council members shared stories of changed lives, improved test scores, health screenings that caught serious conditions, elderly residents finding new purpose through art. Marcus listened intently, making notes. When he spoke, his words carried weight without domination. The endowment will be independently audited. All decisions require majority board approval. By sunset, the framework was taking shape. The community center would operate under joint governance with clear checks and balances. Funding would flow through transparent channels, protected by legal safeguards. The third day brought resolution. In the morning light, lawyers finalized language while townspeople filtered in to witness the signing. Pastor Samuel offered a brief prayer. The creditors' representatives signed first, accepting the settlement terms with chastened formality. Marcus and Evelyn signed together, their pens scratching in unison across official papers. The endowment structure was set. 3 town-elected board members would represent local interests, 2 foundation appointees would provide professional oversight, and Evelyn would serve as honorary founding chair with advisory privileges. 2 months, Marcus announced. We'll open the doors in 60 days. 2 months later, sunrise painted the renovated community center in honey gold light. Fresh paint gleamed on the trim, and red, white, blue bunting draped the entrance. Inside, the transformation was complete. Lily arranged her students' artwork in the lobby gallery, watercolors, charcoal sketches, and photographs telling the town's story. Her own portrait of Catherine hung in a place of honor, its mysterious subject watching over the space with knowing eyes. Rose organized her literacy corner with loving precision. The books are labeled by reading level, she explained to volunteer tutors. Each bin has tracking sheets for progress notes. In the small medical suite, June stocked supplies with Hector's help. Their hands brushed as they arranged bandages. Both pretended not to notice. The clinic schedule on the wall was already filled with appointments. The main hall hummed with activity. Children practiced their ribbon-cutting poem while parents arranged chairs. Coffee percolated in the kitchen, its aroma mixing with fresh paint and lemon-scented cleaner. Elderly couples claimed front-row seats, sharing memories of the building's factory days. Remember when this was all machinery? One man mused. Now look, it's alive again. Evelyn straightened her jacket, touching the chairman's pin on her lapel. Marcus stood beside her, his presence supportive rather than controlling. They watched townspeople stream in, former factory workers, young families, teenagers wearing volunteer badges. The ceremony began at 10. Pastor Samuel blessed the space, while children fidgeted with their ribbon-cutting scissors. Town council members gave brief speeches, followed by program participants sharing stories. My grandson learned to read here, a grandmother testified. During the pilot program, he finished his first chapter book. The health screening caught my diabetes early, added a former foreman. Probably saved my life. Art class helped me feel human again, said a shy woman clutching a painted canvas. Marcus spoke last, his words simple and direct. This isn't about one person's vision. It's about community wisdom and shared purpose. The real work begins now, together. Evelyn stepped forward, scissors glinting. The children flanked her with their own small pears, ready to cut the red ribbon stretched across the doorway. The crowd held its breath. By the power of this community, Evelyn declared, I declare the Carter Community Center officially open. Scissors flashed. The ribbon fell. Applause swelled like a wave as the doors swung wide, welcoming everyone home. Inside, sunlight streamed through clear windows onto polished floors. The space held both memory and possibility. Rose's reading nooks, June's medical suite, Lily's art gallery, meeting rooms, and gathering spaces. On the wall, a plaque listed board members and founding principles, a promise of shared governance cast in bronze. The crowd flowed inside, filling the hall with laughter and conversation. Children ran to the reading corner while seniors claimed comfortable chairs. The medical suite's door stood open, ready to serve. Art students gravitated to their displayed work, proud smiles lighting their faces. In the doorway, Marcus watched alongside Evelyn and her daughters. No grand gestures, no corporate fanfare, just quiet satisfaction as their shared vision took its first breath of life. 10 months after the community centre's ribbon cutting, autumn painted the town in warm golds and crimsons. Morning light streamed through the centre's windows, catching dust motes that danced above well-worn books and art supplies. In the literacy wing, Rose helped 8-year-old Tommy sound out the last paragraph of his chapter book. His face scrunched with concentration as he worked through each word. And they lived happily ever after. He read, then broke into a wide grin. I did it, Miss Rose. I finished the whole book. Rose hugged him tight, remembering his struggles just months ago. You certainly did. Should we ring the reading bell? Tommy bounded to the copper bell mounted on the wall, a tradition Rose had started for reading milestones. Its clear tone brought smiles from other students and tutors scattered around the room. That's our 15th bell this month, Rose told a visiting education coordinator. Our reading scores have improved 30% since spring. Down the hall, June's medical suite hummed with activity. She watched Sarah, their newest volunteer nurse, take vital signs from an elderly patient. Perfect technique. June praised as Sarah finished. Remember when you came here as a patient last winter? Sarah nodded, adjusting her nurse's badge. The free clinic helped me get my diabetes under control. Now I'm halfway through nursing school and doing my practicum here. She gestured to the waiting room. We're booked solid through December. June checked the schedule on her tablet. Regional outreach starts next week. 3 neighboring towns want to replicate our program. She paused, touching the medical note in her wallet. The one that had once caused such worry. Her latest checkup had been clear. In the art wing, Lily hung the last painting for her evening class. Student artwork filled the walls. Landscapes, portraits, abstract emotions splashed across canvas. Her phone chimed with a message from the City Gallery confirming her upcoming show. First solo exhibition, she murmured, then turned to welcome her morning students, a group from the local recovery centre. They settled at easels, hands steady now with paintbrushes instead of trembling. Today we're painting hope, Lily announced, setting up a still life of autumn leaves and morning light. What does new beginning look like to you? The community room buzzed with breakfast preparations. Evelyn arranged coffee urns while Marcus, wearing jeans instead of his usual suit, set up folding chairs. Never thought I'd see Marcus Hale hauling chairs, commented Frank, a former factory foreman who'd once been skeptical of the whole project. Marcus grinned, stacking another chair. Better workout than the gym. You're here more than your office these days, Frank observed. Found something I missed. Marcus replied simply, thinking of the letter he'd discovered last week. It had confirmed that the woman in Lily's painting was indeed his cousin Catherine, who'd lived in town briefly during the 1960s. The connection felt right. Not dramatic, just a gentle thread weaving him back into the community's fabric. Breakfast regulars filtered in, retirees, early shift workers, school kids grabbing toast. Evelyn poured coffee and coordinated volunteer sign-ups for next week's Harvest Festival. The centre had become what she'd hoped, a living room for the town. June's clinic schedule filled 3 months out now. Rose's literacy program had a waiting list for tutors. Lily's art therapy classes partnered with regional treatment centres. The endowment board met monthly, decisions made through respectful debate and compromise. Late afternoon found the Carter kitchen filled with unexpected dinner guests. Marcus had stopped by to drop off grant paperwork. June brought Sarah to meet the family. Rose's star student Tommy and his mother joined them after his reading celebration. Evelyn stretched the soup with extra vegetables, added another leaf to the table. Lily set out mismatched bowls while Rose sliced bread. June and Sarah discussed clinic logistics while Tommy proudly read the back of a soup can. Marcus helped carry dishes to the table, as comfortable here as in any boardroom. He'd found something he hadn't known he needed. Not just connection, but belonging. The kitchen windows glowed warm against the deepening autumn evening. Steam rose from soup bowls as stories and laughter mingled. Tommy's reading progress, Sarah's nursing dreams, Lily's upcoming show, June's expansion plans, Rose's new literacy grants. Evelyn watched her unlikely family, daughters, neighbors, former strangers, now bound by choice and circumstance. Marcus caught her eye and smiled, understanding. "You know," she said softly, buttering a piece of bread, "I thought that day at the ceremony that we had to choose one path forward. But really the town chose each other. We all did." The table hummed with agreement. Outside, leaves danced on the evening breeze, and through the window they could see the community center's lights glowing steadily against the gathering dusk. Around the table, heads bent over steaming bowls. They were no longer savior and saved, benefactor and recipient, stranger and host. They were simply neighbors sharing soup and stories, choosing each other again and again in all the small ways that made a community whole. Tommy sounded out another word from his book. Sarah and June compared nursing school notes. Lily sketched on a napkin while Rose graded papers. Marcus and Frank debated local baseball scores. And Evelyn, watching it all, felt the quiet rightness of endings that were really beginnings in disguise. The autumn evening deepened into dusk. Porch lights winked on along the street, and through the center's windows they could see the art room still lit for evening classes, the literacy wing glowing with after-school sessions, the clinic lights burning late for those who needed them. Not just a building anymore, but a beacon. Not just programs, but possibilities. Not just a town, but a family, chosen and choosing day after day.